Welcome to the Brand Theory Podcast, the podcast for helping you uncover your passion, realize your purpose, and take the aligned action. Together, we're going to prove the theory that when we live our lives on brand, the possibilities become limitless. I'm your host, Danielle Marquesi, branding expert and business coach. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Brand Theory Podcast. Today we are chatting with Candace, a social media manager and coach from Toronto. She works with brands, small businesses, and entrepreneurs to develop custom social media strategies to increase their engagement, sell out their programs or products, and create genuine connections with their community. This is another little bit of a full circle moment for me. I won't speak for Candace, but maybe she feels the same. Candace was a part of a program that I co-coach with my own coach, and she was a client inside the program. And literally 5 months later, she's inside my own high-level mastermind, working with the same coach side by side now. And she has just been killing the game and so quickly. So I'm so excited to kind of dive into what the progress has looked like internally, externally, inside the business and personal life, and just really dive into who Candace is as the brand. Welcome to the show, Candace.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. So I have a bunch of questions for you here, but before we even jump into any of that, I always like to ask, well, tell us your business name with this, but also who is Candace the brand?
Well, really, Candace the brand, my brand name is Friend Request, but really what I stand for is I really want to work with women, entrepreneurs, small businesses who are struggling or they're finding it hard to create a presence on social media or reach their goals, and work with them to understand and uncover what are those internal blocks that are holding them back from reaching their goals, and then what are, the physical, like strategic blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll work to uncover those different aspects and really create that customized engagement plan that they can implement and take control of their own voices and be authentic to themselves through that process.
I love that. That's so awesome. I know we've covered a bit of inside your intro about who you are and what you do inside your business, but I always love asking, how did you get started? Like, how did you get started inside social media? How did you kind of pivot to then starting your own business? And how did you get to the point where you're at now?
Yeah, this is a bit of a beast of a question for me.
Oh, I love it. Go for it.
So I'll dive into this. So really how this all started for me was about 5 years ago. So I was in school last semester looking for a co-op experience, and I was lucky enough to find something at an agency. Let's start like an entry-level social media position. But I'd always wanted to dive into social with a marketing background. And I was there for about it was there for 5 years, but throughout that time, about 2.5 years ago, it started to get where, the paychecks were late.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that same time, my boss would always be kind of at the same time saying like, well, you would never be able to start your own business, or you wouldn't be able to go out on your own, or get a role somewhere else. So, you
watch me.
Stick through it. This is all you've got. Right. And it kind of came at the same time as everyone saying like, you're so lucky to have that role. You're so lucky for the desired salary at such a young age. And it was like that mindset of, okay, maybe I'm not worthy. Right. Like, let him tell me what my story was. So it was like that manipulation. But, I got to that point where when the paychecks weren't coming at all, it's like, okay, well, I need money and I'm not happy. So it was a hard decision, but I left that role. And when I left, I knew that I had like the systems and the strategies based on working my way up to a social media strategist for me to create a business. But there was something holding me back. And it was confidence, the worthiness blocks, the imposter syndrome, the victim, right? So I had this story and I knew that I needed to recreate it and create a new story for myself. And that's when I found my coach, Kelly, and you helped co-coach me too throughout that process. So again, it is really full circle for me telling the story because you're part of it. But through that program, I learned that, you have these two different energies, like your masculine get shit done and which is where you tap into your intuition and your flow. And I really discovered that, there's more to social media than the strategy. It's really important that showing up there, understanding that what people are showing, it's this perfect life, and we can get caught up in that.
Mm.
And it starts to bring up those confidence and that imposter blocks. But to have those strategies in place where if that happens, you have like the action plan, you're able to protect yourself and protect all the work that you've done for your mindset. It was a big learning for me. And it was something that I really wanted to help other women with, because I see so many people on the platform struggling with it and not reaching their full potential because they're holding themselves back from being authentic because they think they need to be what somebody else is doing.
Mm. I love that. That's like everything that I've been trying to communicate lately through building this personal brand in congruence with our business brands. And social media is like, can be the best part of your business and can be the downfall of your business from that huge comparison, because we always feel like we have to be doing what other people are doing. We have to be staying up with the latest trends. And while that is true to a certain extent, I don't think we need to use what people are doing, because we don't need to look at what people are doing to copy. We need to look at that for inspiration, but it can be a very, very fine line between the two.
It's so true, because I think a lot of times when people come to me and they'll say like, oh, I'm not getting the engagement I like, or I want more followers. It's like, okay, well, why do you want more followers? And they're like, oh, because people with 50,000 followers are seen more seriously. So they think that they need to do things because it's what they see other people doing it. But then they get lost along the way, because when they're just trying to replicate or copy what someone else is doing, their authenticity isn't coming through, and nobody's going to connect with that. And that's where that kind of breakthrough on the communication.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive into this whole authentic thing and how to stay authentic in social media. So if someone's coming to you and they're saying, I want more followers because of the look, or I want to get the better aesthetic look on my Instagram, but they're not necessarily connecting with the authentic part of it, and it's really just for the numbers and the look part of it. How do you like break that down, or how do you recommend connecting to that purpose inside your social media?
Well, honestly, like what I like to do is just break it all down and go back to the fundamentals and the basics. And sometimes people will say like, oh, I've already developed my why. But if you're in a position, or like the passion or the strategy behind it, but if you're in a position where you come full circle and you're still comparing yourself or doing things just for the sake of doing things, I think you've lost yourself along the way. So I like to really start from scratch, revisit what is that purpose, or no, I like to call it the fuel. Like what's that fuel in that belly that burns every day, and why you wake up and you want to help people through social media, and revisit that. But then I also like to kind of have discussions about their life in general, about kind of their other circumstances. So, really work through setting boundaries for themselves. Because I find a lot of people are so worried about getting clients, and then they get clients, but then they don't treat themselves as a client. So then they can their own journey, because they're so focused on just getting clients that they're not showing up for themselves. So like setting boundaries too, and just being aware of who you're surrounding yourselves and the circumstances of what you're around, and really making sure that you're, again, treating yourself as a client and setting that time aside for yourself. And also just like, then I like to go through and make sure that from a mindset perspective, we're creating a safe space on social media. Because I think there's like this mindset about like they think it's really uncomfortable to be unfollowing other accounts. But I think it's something we need to become more comfortable with, is that we want our ideal followers to follow us, right? We don't want people we don't want people following us that are triggering them, right? So it's okay to unfollow people so that we are creating that safe space on social media for us. And then I like to kind of also tap into the limiting beliefs and see what kind of is holding them back, what those fears are, what the blocks are, and then work through how we can, release them. Because a lot of the times the blocks are the similar to what is holding them back from implementing that engagement strategy, or from showing up as their authentic self, because they think that if they are themselves, then people won't resonate with that. So they need to be.
That's so interesting. It's funny that you say that people are afraid of, if they show up as themselves, they're afraid they won't resonate with their audience. But that's the exact thing that people want to see to resonate with you. Even if we think it's quote unquote weird or out of the ordinary, or people don't care about these things that we're sharing, those are usually the things that people care about the most.
It's so true because it's like, and then also it kind of goes to like when people ask, well, what do I post or what do I share on social media? And they, it is important to have content pillars, but I think when we get so into the content pillar, so structured where it's like all my stories, I'm only going to share, repost, talk about my services or this, like we don't see the personality. And I'm not saying we always need to be showing our face or we always need to be doing something, but I think what you do so well, it's like when you talk about it too, is you show your mom, you tap into that relationship. And I think that's so important because it gets to know a different level of you and a layer of you. And I think some people, they wouldn't do that because they think it wouldn't fit into the perfect image. Yeah. So it is so important for us to, and I think sometimes I say like treat your business account as it is your personal Instagram account and share what you would share to your closest friends, to all your followers who you want to help serve with your business, because it should be the same message.
Yeah, I love that. How do you like teach, I guess would be the right word, or how do you get somebody to be a little bit more comfortable? I find people are so uncomfortable at first to share that personal end, right? So I always recommend starting with the 3 things, which is my example is my coffee, the travel when that was a thing, TV, and my mom. I guess that's 4 things, but I guess I'm just Xing travel for right now. It's fine.
Seriously.
So that's kind of how I say, if you're uncomfortable showing up personally through your social media, that's where I would recommend starting. But as the social media expert, is there something else that we can be doing to get a little bit more comfortable of showing that personal side inside our social media?
This is really interesting because so I had posted a post about this a month ago, I think, talking about how we can't wait until we're comfortable in order to show up. We need to show up until we're comfortable, because when we're in that
my God, I love that.
Right? Because I feel like when we're uncomfortable, that's kind of where the magic is happening. If we're uncomfortable, I always say that's my body's way of telling me like, you're doing the right thing, keep going. So I just find that a lot of the time people are always like, I'll wait, I'll feel better about this eventually, I'll do it. But I think there's ways that we can start to slowly introduce ourselves to make ourselves feel more comfortable while still showing up, right? Like you could start by, some things I say is start by videotaping like certain things, like maybe your desk setup, or maybe it is your morning coffee and you talk behind the camera so you get used to your voice being on there.
I love that.
Yeah. Because some people, I think the biggest thing was for their voice because they don't like themselves. Which I could relate to that. I'm like, that's what I sound like.
Yeah, but I could relate to that at first, but now I'm like, yeah, fuck it. It's fine.
That's me. Who cares? They're used to it now. But yeah, I think it's so important to just start off slowly, but don't wait until you're feeling comfortable in order to do it. You never will. There will always be an excuse. And then honestly, just start showing your face in small doses. Like even if it, like for me, I started with posing with my dog. Like everybody loves dog, not right? Or just start talking about things that you feel comfortable with. So you could start with, what I like to say is, if you just posted something on your feed, then you just take your caption and speak to your caption in stories to compliment.
Yeah, so then you don't even have to think about what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? You already have that script, quote unquote.
Yeah, because what you're posting about in your feed is something that you obviously live by and feel by because you're passionate enough to post it on social media. So you could just speak to that, like read your caption, not like read it word by word, but take through and go through those top level notes and speak to that in stories. And then another thing is like, this is like a side note, but always like put your text, what you're saying in your stories, because then it helps people to like that aren't listening. But yeah.
I think that makes a difference. It either makes people turn on the volume or it just helps them kind of, because we all are guilty of it, just kind of clicking through, right? But depending on how much time we have or whatever, but at least if they're seeing the content that we're saying, even if it is kind of paraphrasing, they're still getting that message that we're trying to share.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Can we move into social media trends right now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so what do we need to know? What's the deal with hashtags right now? I heard a rumor that we shouldn't even be using them because of the U.S. election. Sorry.
Sorry.
With algorithms, what platforms should we be focusing on? Just give us your expertise on all of the things right now.
So I'm really focused. So for me, I'm really focused on Instagram. There's obviously other platforms that are up and coming, and I can talk to that. Well, not up and coming. They've already like smashed their way through. Platforms are trying to keep up by adding new features. So the thing about Instagram, we'll start there, is that, you know how you always see these posts about like cracking the algorithm and cracking code? Like there really is no code to crack the algorithm. There's things that we can do to help our presence and help increase our engagement and our awareness and our reach, but there's no real like code to it. The thing is, we should be taking advantage of all of the functionality on the platform. I'm not saying that just because Reels are new, everyone should be doing Reels, because that, like, if you're doing the same type of content, you're not switching it up and you're going to lose your followers, because it's going to be too consistent in a sense where it's all the same. So the thing is, a lot of the times the mistakes I see on Instagram specifically is that we're not using all the functionality and we're not using all the engagement tools that are offered to us. Like specifically in stories, a lot of the times, like, we're not using all those different features, and that is just an additional way to increase our, our awareness and our reach. And also with hashtags, like specifically for Instagram, like hashtags are such a beast that I find there's like so many freebies out there on how to make the most out of your hashtags, how to really, like, increase your reach with them. But I mean, there's always going to be like the perfect formula that you need to follow. Right now, we're definitely talking about, because of the US election, they stopped obviously the ability. They don't want misinformation being spread, which I think is good, during the election, so they stopped the use of them. But it's kind of interesting because all of my clients, like I have some big brand clients, and then I have some other smaller accounts that are up and coming. All of their engagements have like gone through the roof because people are working overtime on social media because they think they needed to, because when you lose hashtags, you're losing reach. So all of my clients' content is doing so much better without hashtags, which I think is so interesting. And it opens up such an interesting discussion about how we're finding people on social media, because I think a lot of people get caught up on the hashtags, and sometimes people are just using them for the sake of using them, but they're not using them for what the content is related to. Like a lot of the times, I guess I could backtrack here, maybe just explain, because basically Instagram likes to put everyone, like every account, into a box. They really like to categorize things.
Okay.
So that's why they say, like, be consistent with the type of hashtags that you're using. So if you're like a food blogger and you're using a lot of different food related hashtags, and you do that consistently, like not the same ones, obviously, but if you're using the consistent type of food hashtags, then Instagram will just trust that you're consistent and that you are always posting food. So if you're a food blogger and then you stop posting a picture of food, but you post something about your life and you still use the same hashtags, they'll trust you enough to put you into like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so people are worried about losing out on that featured section.
Yeah.
Because of the loss of it. But I don't know, I think it taps into the additional ways of engagement, and it helps the smaller businesses and the smaller accounts who are growing, because they're doing it, they're reaching out different ways, right?
Yeah.
In the industry leaders pages and seeing who follows them, or going to different locations, or maybe some bars and restaurants and see who tags photos there. So it's really helping out accounts that are ready to expand their reach to the next.
I feel like, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit more, but I feel like I've seen a trend in 2020 particularly of us kind of stop playing the games on Instagram, like stop using. I really haven't gotten that many bot responses recently, and we're not, because we physically can't do that anymore. And we're not seeing so many sliding into DMs with that blanket message. I haven't gotten that many lately that I can really speak to. So I feel like we're moving towards, or back towards, using it the way it was intended to be social and to kind of create those genuine human connections. And maybe it's just me, because that's what I really wanted to see, and that's what I am seeing. So I don't know if you have a little bit of insight on that, but just by you explaining the hashtags and what that's kind of doing right now, it's kind of solidifying that point of there is definitely a shift in social media, and it can be scary because it's so unknown, and people are talking about, well, what if one day it just disappears? And okay, what if one day it disappears? But right now, how can we use that to our advantage? And I think the answer really is getting back to those genuine human connections.
I think that's such a good point. And I definitely think that over the last year, we've seen that trend with like-minded businesses. And when I say that, I mean like entrepreneurs and small businesses and brands. They're moving away from trying to cold call DM you. But where I think that uptake is in like, because now influencer marketing has become such, it's like booming right now, right? Like that's how brands are not, and especially with COVID, you're not seeing the traditional marketing anymore. Like the billboards are gone, the commercials, they're still there, but we're really focusing on tapping into that influence. And so a lot of the brands that are up and coming, they're really trying to tap into that like cold call in a sense where it's like they're trying to create that MLM, but through like smaller accounts with like 1,000 followers. And they're like, oh, you know, do this, create this content for me for free. And then eventually we'll give you a partnership, and people are kind of falling for that. So I think because it's people that are desperate for the growth and they think they need that to get them to the next level. So that's kind of the thing where I'm seeing is on the rise this year. And that's something I really want to help people with, because a lot, like I have had clients that have come to me and they were like, oh, I've done this, I've provided free content here, and it hasn't turned anything. I thought I was promised I would get all these followers from it. And this. And so that's, you know, making sure that people are protected and they're understanding that that is something you could, you know, come across on social, but these are how you work through like making sure that you assess what's the right partnership to take on or not.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, I have another question. It's like in terms of numbers and engagement and stuff like that. So obviously we want our accounts to grow. We want the engagement. We want the DMs coming to us. We want the comments and all of that kind of stuff. We want the likes. But as we are moving towards that trend of likes disappearing and all that kind of stuff, I do know that it is, I guess the right word maybe would be healthier to let go of the numbers. But how do we balance that line of wanting to be healthy in terms of our mental space and also kind of looking at them to track if what we're doing is heading in the right direction?
Yeah, such a good point. And I think that's what's so important about having an engagement strategy, so that you create something that you know your ideal client is going to want to see and it's going to resonate with them and based on their needs and what they're searching for on social. But I think as we move away from the numbers, like I honestly have never been one over likes, because I know in the back end that number doesn't mean much with the algorithm, right? Like the way that algorithm is tracking things specifically now, what's so important to people and businesses are like the saves. And we want to create content that is going to, you know, trigger people to save our content and want to come back to it later. Because that really shows Instagram that, you know, your frequency is going to increase because people are going to come back to it more than once, and that, you know, you're really resonating with them. So saves are definitely on the rise, and it's like it's the biggest metric that I track, because it's just so important, and that shows that what you're creating is really resonating. And then of course, like comments, and not just like bots that are commenting all these emojis. We really want to create content that's going to generate meaningful dialogue. So that's something that I'm always tracking. And then I know that like obviously, and that's kind of within our existing community, right? But we always want to be reaching and tapping into other communities and expanding our reach and expanding the people that are coming to our profile. So within that, like that's where kind of the whole hashtag things is coming up, because that's how people were, you know, that's how they were relying on it before. But now it's all coming back to the content. It's king, right? It's all about your content. If you want your content to be seen by more people, you want to create shareable content that's going to resonate. So people are sharing your content to their audiences, and then you're expanding your reach that way, right? So it is kind of all about community, building the relationships. And that's, I think, what's on the rise right now too, is your people are creating meaningful connections. Like I have met so many people who I consider my friends, and I've never seen them in real life through social media. And we all support each other. It's community over competition. We're all sharing each other's content to expand everyone's reach, right?
Yeah. I love that point you said. It's community over competition. And I was listening to a podcast this morning, and then they were talking about this, where this woman felt like every time she would go to a women's expo or a female business owners expo, she was being like X, like she was not getting that community factor. And she created this space in her community and her business to combat that feeling. And I just feel like what you're saying is, I feel maybe it's just the women I surround myself with, but this whole community of online entrepreneurship, it's really about I have your back, you have my back. Let's do this together. This isn't about like stealing clients. It's not about stealing content, although, you know, that's a whole different conversation, but it really is like, I want you to succeed just as much as I want to succeed. And I feel like when we create content, and maybe it's just because I know you and I can speak to this a little bit, but when we create content, we generally are doing it like, of course we want to grow our businesses. Of course we want to grow our income. We want that next level for ourselves, but we want to create the value and the teachable content and all of this stuff to help other people, whether that's women, our community in general. If it's one post with one quote that someone else is sharing, that's us knowing, and that's them validating that what we're doing is good and it's helping you and it's spreading the message and it's impacting you in some way.
I think it's so true. And I can especially speak to this with you, like and I think we've seen that. And that's how I know I've surrounded myself with the right women, the right people in the right community, because that's something that I've always learned, like through the programs that we've done, through my coach, through you, when you were coaching me. It's all about supporting each other, because we all have different skill sets that could help the women and help people tap into their higher level self, get to that next level and be successful. Right. So like even you said like you had a client and you didn't have the skill set and you wanted to pass it over to me, or you had set, but you didn't have the time and you were like, I think this would be for you. So it's all proof. And I've done that with other people because people have done it to me, and it all comes full circle. If you're giving back then and constantly holding on, then you're not proving not proving anything, but I think it's just, you're not practicing what you preach. And then it isn't going to come across as authentic because you're not speaking from a place of truth.
Yeah, absolutely. We all can do this together, guys. There's plenty of clients to go around. There's plenty of money to go around. There's plenty of time to go around. We can all be the success that we want to be.
I mean, do you know how many new accounts are made each day on Instagram?
I know.
They're creating accounts to look for help. Like that's what a lot of people are creating these accounts for, to tap into resources and find the communities. So
yeah, that's so important. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of answered this before with leaving your job and stuff like that, but speaking back to living on brand and all that kind of stuff, was there a time in your life or your business where you can recall where you weren't living on brand, you weren't living in alignment to who you are, your morals, your values, likes, dislikes, all that kind of stuff? And how did you pivot back to living on brand?
Oh, that's such a good question. So yeah, I spoke to this, but like when I left that role, I was in such like a really, really low place. Like I've struggled with anxiety and depression, but it was at an all-time high because I wasn't giving myself and my body what it needed. I was just like wallowing in that mentality. And I didn't even know what any of that was. I just thought, oh, woe is me. This is all happening to me. I didn't understand that I was creating all these blocks for myself. So, I had gotten to a point where it was like, I know that the fuel inside me is to help women because I have a knowledge and I have the systems and the strategies. So I'm going to take that positive learning that I got from that role. I'm going to take, what I was able to get from it, and I'm going to help other women with that through my journey. And so I knew I needed to invest in myself, and I wasn't going to do it on my own. So that was like, it was a point where I was like, in order for me to actually get to the next level or actually take a step forward, I need to tell myself that I'm ready for it and love myself a little bit and invest in myself. And so once I did that and started to actually put the work in and treat myself like a client, block my Google Calendar off, and to stop saying, I'll get to it tomorrow, that's when the changes started to happen.
Yeah, I just love that point that you keep making of treating yourself like a client. Because I literally had this thought this morning about how I've been a little guilty lately of putting all my energy into the client work because I want them to succeed. I want their businesses to succeed. And not that I don't want my own business to succeed, but sometimes we want to give so much that we forget that we need to give to ourselves first before we give to our clients. And I definitely have been guilty like the last couple of weeks of not making the time to block out my calendar to work on my own business stuff or my own personal development. It's not that I'm not doing it, but it could be better. And it's a little bit short right now, let's say. So I could definitely, that's a good reminder for me. So thank you for sharing that with us.
But I think that's what's like the biggest, just to kind of echo what you're saying, that's the biggest learning that I took away from investing in myself, is that in order for me to actually move forward and get to the next level, I needed to be able to reflect on what I was doing. Because I would constantly say, like, I wouldn't say it, but I was like, I don't need to make any changes. This is all fine, right?
Yeah.
But have the awareness to be able to recognize when you're doing things that aren't benefiting you, or if you're holding yourself back, then you can make changes. But if you're not able to recognize it, or if you're constantly going to make excuses, then you can't, move forward.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, so from an outsider's perspective, you've been able to build your business and this incredible income very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You feel it was quick, and I know you've kind of spoke about this a little bit, but what do you feel like was the thing that helped you make that transformation so quickly? Was it one thing, a culmination of a lot?
It's so interesting because, and again, before I invested in my coach and did that, I never believed in manifesting. I never believed in the universe.
Yeah, she didn't, guys. I can tell you firsthand. She did not.
I was like, I remember when Kelly was like, oh yeah, okay, meditate, talk to your higher level self, and like make sure that you're dedicating that time for your non-negotiable every day. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll just tell her I did it. And then the one day she was like, Candace, I know you haven't done it yet, I can tell. So just do it, humor me and do it once. And then I did it, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll do 5 days of it, commit myself to it. And honestly, that was where I saw the most growth. It was just small things too. Like the day I invested in myself, 2 new clients signed on, because I think I was finally releasing all of the limiting. So I was finally working through and changing my language. I was not coming from a place of lack anymore, where it was like, oh, maybe they'll work with me, or maybe this will happen. I was like, no, they will work with me, because I will put the best proposal forward. I will put the best energy forward, and they will want to work with me because of that. Right. Like I just started to stop use the self-deprecating language. Started to really think of myself as that woman that did deserve it all. And that it just started to happen. Like, and at the same time as working on my mindset, I was doing the physical work of building my business, putting in the time in my calendar, and building my website and doing everything like that. And as I did that, it was crazy. Like I had put my social media up and had put 2 posts up, and I had 2 clients like a week later.
Yeah.
So and that's the message I want to put across. I stopped thinking about what they wanted to hear from me, and I just started talking about what I wanted to give to people, and it resonated.
Yeah, absolutely. And watching you go through this process was like super, just so like, I can't even describe it. It gives me chills, like, because it was so quote unquote fast, but it almost came as a light bulb moment. I remember us getting on your monthly call, as in the last time that we talked, you were not like acting like you were acting on this call. You were a little bit more shy, a little bit more reserved. And then you shared with us something that you had read, or something that you had realized. I can't remember exactly. And I was like, she got it. That was the moment where I knew she got it. She's embodying that type of work. And guys, I feel like I should say this every time, but doing the mindset and the personal development work isn't the picture of you like sitting cross-legged, meditating and weaving sage around. If that's what you're into, freaking go for it. But it can be very much what you want and what you are comfortable with as you kind of grow in that journey. But it can be like what Candace is saying, is doing the research, reading, listening to the podcast, giving yourself the space to meditate or think or whatever. But it really is those switches that we make inside our brain of thinking about ourselves. And you had the strategy. Like you always knew the strategy. You knew it frontwards, backwards, upside down, everything. But I think you were missing a little bit of the belief part of it, that you are worthy of this next level, that you can leave your job if you want to. You can create this incredibly wildly successful life for yourself. And it's just showing that once you made that switch of belief, and once you made those decisions that you do want this and you can have this, things literally just started showing up for you. But you did take the action.
I think that's such a good point that you just made. And I think everyone needs to hear that, because I think people turns them off of, and that might have turned me off at first too, of the mindset work, is because they think it's like the woo woo, like whipping the sage around and stuff. And it like you said, it can be that, but it also can be like just listening to your body's needs, and then taking an afternoon off where you watch a Netflix show for 30 minutes and then you get your work done.
Yeah.
You're just listening to your body, and you're listening to its needs, and you're learning to tap into in your intuition.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
It can be whatever you want it to be, but yeah, it's just such a roller coaster, and I want everyone to get on it.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly how I was when I first started with it. It's the same thing. Like Kelly used to pull cars on our call and I thought she was batshit crazy. And then, 4 weeks later, I would tell her not to pull the card on the call, but message me, like pull it and then Voxer me because I like to listen to it a couple of times. Like that's how much I started dipping my toe into it a little bit. And from there, it's just like the experiment process of learning what you like, what you don't like, or who you like to listen to, who you don't like to listen to, and just allowing yourself to like get a little uncomfortable with it, dive a little bit deeper, look into those shadows that you've been ignoring for a little while, those fears and stuff. But it gets to be just the thing that really creates this space to bring in so much success through your business.
I love that. It's like get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because being uncomfortable leads to magic. So.
Yeah, it does. It really, really does. I love it. So what do you have going on next? What can we expect next from you? I know, like, guys, she like literally launched her business not even a month ago, and she is freaking killing it. So what can we look forward to seeing inside your own social media?
Yeah. So right now I'm kind of tapping into everything that we just talked about. Like what in my platform at the beginning, I was really just like expressing who I was and the message I wanted to get across. And through that, it naturally happened where I was able to gain clients. But what I really want to help women and small businesses and entrepreneurs understand is that, when we find that perfect balance between our masculine, which is like us treating ourselves as the client, us getting the work done, learning the systems and the strategies, that energy, and then also the feminine energy where we're willing to open ourselves up to what those blocks are that we have, releasing them and working through that. We know when we're on social media, when we're living in an online world, that there's going to be things that trigger us. There's going to be come up and that are going to start to make those blocks rise up, but that we can protect our energy on social media through, different systems and strategies. And so that you need to have that perfect balance between your masculine and your feminine energy in order to get to that next level. Mm-hmm. So that's why I created my new coaching. It's like a one-on-one coaching program where I work with women and help them understand the physical strategies and then also the mindset strategies in order for them to become their authentic selves and show up as their authentic selves on social media and help their clients as much as they want to help them.
Yeah, I love that. So excited for that. Any kind of last thoughts? First of all, tell us where we can find you, where we can hang out with you more on social media, and any last thoughts you want to leave us with before we say goodbye.
Yeah, so I am friend request. It's _ friend request on Instagram.
Such a cool name, by the way.
It came to me through a meditation, so I knew it was meant to be.
There we go.
If you asked me a year ago, I wouldn't have said that. So yes. And honestly, just the final message for me is that open yourself up to the possibilities of being able to tap into your mindset. Open yourself up to the possibility of being uncomfortable and letting yourself work through that. Because I think, again, I'll just keep saying that if we wait until we're comfortable to show up, we're never going to show up. So just show up and you will become comfortable with it.
Yeah. Feel the fear and do it anyway, guys. I love this so much. Candace, thank you so much for sharing all this with us and being here today. I have a feeling, and I feel like I say this with every interview because I feel like I have such good people on this podcast, but I feel like you're going to be back on sooner rather than later. And thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I loved it.
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.